We will be recording. Oh, there we go. There's the announcement. We will be recording the webinar today for any of those that were not able to make it. And I want to introduce myself. My name is Jenny Young. I'll be your moderator today for our webinar. I work in the Office of Juvenile Justice as the Juvenile Justice Manager, and we're really excited to share this dashboard with you today. As some of you may have heard, there's a question and answer function that you can put questions as we're going. We're going to save those questions till the end, but we'll make sure to have some time to be able to answer those questions as we go. Just to give you a quick agenda outline for our webinar, we're going to have our panelists introduce themselves. We're going to go over the history and the why around this data dashboard. And then we're also going to discuss the collaborative nature of how it's been built, how it's been funded, as well as the data analysis process. Where did the data come from? And how has it been organized? And what's the scope of that data? And then, of course, the most exciting part, we will be doing a demonstration of the dashboard during this webinar. There has been a link dropped in the chat. You can't post in the chat, but you should be able to see it if you want to explore the dashboard after the webinar. And then we'll make sure you also know where it lives online before we're finished. So to get us started, I would like to invite our panelists to introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Rachel Sanford. I work for the Washington State Center for Court Research as a research assistant, and I have been working on building the dashboard for this project.
Hi, I'm Andrew Peterson. I'm a principal research associate with the Washington State Center for Court Research, part of the Administrative Office of the Courts.
And I'm Carl McCurley. I'm the manager of the Center for Court Research. As Andrew mentioned, we're part of the Administrative Office of the Courts, the Office of Court Innovation. And it's our pleasure to be here with our friends and colleagues from the Office of Juvenile Justice.
Thank you. This is Alice Quayle. I'm with the Office of Juvenile Justice in DCYF. Good to see everyone. I think my job is to go a little bit further, right, Jenny? And talk about the office and our involvement with the project. So the Office of Juvenile Justice serves as a resource for system improvement that assure young people who come into contact with the justice system, and that contact ought to be rare, fair, and beneficial. In addition to supporting juvenile detention alternatives, monitoring federal OJJDP core requirements, our office also staff and support state advisory group known as the Partnership Council on Juvenile Justice. And the council received federal funding to support state and local system improvement initiative. And the data dashboard is one of those funded projects. So that is our relationship to the dashboard, in addition to very actively engage in many of the community engagement work to be part of the design process. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. So we're going to dive in real quick to a bit more history around the project. Alice, could you get us started with how the project got started? And then Dr. McCurley, would you share with us about the why once Alice shares the start?
The mute button is always hiding from me when I need to find it. So thank you, Jenny, for the question. I think it was like 4 years ago. That was the last time that we actually distributed the juvenile justice report with printer papers. So many of you probably laughing about now, and you remember what that process looked like. And you probably still have some on your shelf that you're going through those hard copies of the report. There's a great demand to begin developing an online version of the report. And we really take that opportunity to really rethink the design, a design that goes beyond just collecting data and presenting data. And it was Dr. McCurley's great idea, who spearheaded the law enforcement data analysis project. The project allows us and equip us with information to examine where disparity increase and decrease. And during the project development process, we were very intentional of engaging system and community partners. Our partners offer critical insight as to how to improve accessibility and usefulness of the dashboard. And while you're hearing only from a few of us about the dashboard project today, the success of this project involved many, many individuals. And I can screen through all the participants, and I almost wish I have an opportunity to call you out. But if you're there and you've been involved, we say thank you. So many of those individuals across the state have contributed to the design, as well as some of our national partners as well, that have really give us some really great idea to take us to where we are today. The Partnership Council, using federal fund, funded the project that began in 2019 and now all the way through 2024. So that is give you a little bit of that history of the project, and I will invite Dr. McCurry to provide a little bit more substance to the why.
Thank you very much, Alice. First, I want to go and add to the list of thank yous. And in particular, the friends at the Office of Juvenile Justice, Saskia Crockrell, Alice Coyle, and Jenny Young, who have been the cheerleaders and champions for this program of data analysis. So, really heartfelt thanks to you all. And the goal for the law enforcement data analysis dashboard is to help give the juvenile justice system the ability to see itself more clearly. Being in the courts, we've reported for quite a while, over a decade, on amount and sources of disparity throughout the juvenile justice system. But we weren't able to look at the earlier part of the system, which is the major driver of disparity within the juvenile courts, and that is arrest and referral to court. So this was a good chance for us to use data that had recently become available, the National Incident-Based Reporting System data from law enforcement. And it lets us look at disparity across racial and ethnic groups within a single jurisdiction and across jurisdictions in terms of disparity, the composition of the population of people who are arrested, and the types of offenses for which people are arrested. So this is the basis, we hope, for a healthy conversation between law enforcement agencies and communities. And public administration research shows that that providing better information to an organization and to its customers helps improve the conditions for accountability and transparency. And all organizations need this if they're to function in the public interest. And it's our hope that we can contribute towards that with the juvenile justice system and the front end with law enforcement agencies.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Dr. McCurley, for sharing. And what we're going to do next is look into the analysis process, where the data came from, how it's been organized. And just as a reminder, we're starting here with the law enforcement data dashboard, because this is the primary point that most youth enter the juvenile justice system. It's also one of the places in our all of our decision points in the juvenile justice system that we had some of the biggest gaps in data, at least from the statewide perspective. Local jurisdictions may know their data and be tracking it closely, but there wasn't a way for us to look at the whole state and see everything all together in a systematic way. And so we're going to also be sharing at the end about what our future plans are, and we're not stopping here. So we really hope that you will hang on till the end of the webinar, until after the dashboard is shared, so we can share with you our future goals as well. And so for now, I'd like to invite Dr. Peterson to share with us about this analysis process and the scope of the data.
Thank you, Jenny. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My colleague Rachel Sanford and I are going to walk you through the dashboard in just a minute. But first, I want to highlight a couple points. We've been very slow and deliberate in the rollout of this dashboard, and that's because we care really deeply about the accuracy and transparency of the information we present. Over the past several months, we've presented to the Washington State Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, juvenile court administrators, judges, and other justice system stakeholders, because we realize they're the people that are, one, most familiar with the data we're using, and two, the most potentially affected by the dashboard itself. So we want to make sure that the information we're presenting to them is accurate and transparent. And so now is our time to bring everyone else along with us and catch up and break down what goes in to these numbers and what they mean and and also importantly, what they don't mean. So the metric that you'll see used in the dashboard is a population-based arrest rate. And what that means, and I apologize, there is math in this presentation. It's simply put, it's the number of arrests in an area for a group of people divided by the population of that same group of people in that same area multiplied by 1,000. Okay, so there are really two sources of information. The arrests come from the Washington State Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs. That data is actually gathered by local law enforcement agencies. When they make an arrest, they enter that information into their local case management system. They'll also enter it to the National Incident-Based Reporting System, which is also known as NIBRS. That data, the NIBRS system then carries that data around to WASPIC and also sends it to the FBI. And each of those two groups compiles and reports on the information themselves. People may be wondering, does this represent all the arrests that happen in the state? Well, our data covers 2017, and the data in the dashboard currently covers 2017 through 2020. The agencies in 2017, according to WASPIC, the agencies reporting to them represented about 93% of the state's non-tribal population. Since 2018, that has been 100% of the population represented by the agencies reporting into NIBRS. Now, we know also anecdotally that not all arrests make it into that system. From what we've heard and what we can tell, oftentimes that's just a matter of not having resources enough to do all the data entry necessary. But it's important to keep in mind that when we think that's a minority of the arrests, the total arrests made in the state, that possibility for some discrepancy is there. And we don't believe that there's any intentional bias along that line. It's just a matter of a resource issue. The data represented in our dashboard includes all felony and most misdemeanor arrests. Now, when the law enforcement makes an arrest, they capture not only the arrest was made, but also information about the arrestee, including their demographics and what type of charge or offense was happening. In total, we have about 41,392 arrests. Now that's the top of that rate that we created. The bottom is the population. That data comes from our Office of Financial Management for the state and county level population data. The city level population data comes to us from the Research and Data Analysis Group of the Department of Social and Human Services. Those estimates are made specifically with categories that match up to the arrest data so that we can align those before we create the rate. As I said, these are population-based rates. Some people may be more familiar with, especially looking at disparity, with something called the relative rate index, or an RRI. Now, as I said, our goal is accuracy and transparency. I believe that a RRI actually eliminates some of that transparency, and as a result can cause some problems. We can go into that later if people have questions about it. So I won't do it right now. But the other point I want to emphasize before we move on is that this is specifically for 12 to 17-year-olds. You may be used to looking at 10 to 17-year-olds because that's the more common, full range of the juvenile justice system. We focused on 12 to 17-year-olds because those are the populations that are most affected in arrests. There are not many 10 and 11-year-olds arrested. And so to include them would kind of dilute these numbers. So we wanted to target the group most affected. Next slide, please. I'm also one that doesn't believe in fine print, so I want to put it out there. There are limitations. Whenever we're talking about race and ethnicity, it's a human construct. Fitting people into particular buckets is not a clean or neat process. And so, what you'll see is often reflective of kind of high-level standards. And in this case, there are federal reporting standards that were established in 1997 that create these 6 categories. In Washington State, they follow along with that, and that's done through 2 categories: 1, race, and 2, ethnicity. So race covers American Indian, Alaska Native, Asian, Black, or African American, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, and white. There are 3 options for ethnicity. A person can be Hispanic Latino, non-Hispanic Latino, or unknown. Okay, so in order to kind of reconcile those 2, what we've done, we sought out advice from the Supreme Court's Minority and Justice Commission, as well as the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. And their recommendation was to, if a person is classified as white and their ethnicity is Latino, then we put them in the Latino category. If they are any other race and Latino, we classify them according to their race rather than their ethnicity. Another issue that you may recognize is that when we're talking about that ratio of arrest to population, the arrest data is often what we call administrative data. That means it's not self-reported from the individual. We've kind of gathered anecdotally from the sheriffs and police chiefs and different police departments around the state that there is a lot of variation practice. Some may do it one way, it may change from county to county, city to city, even police officer to police officer. But from what we understand, the majority of instances, it's the officer making a judgment on which category to put that individual. Now, obviously, there's some discrepancy here because population data is self-reported in the census. Now, the easy solution obviously would be, well, let's just have the police officers ask each individual. And that would eliminate that discrepancy. I'm a little torn on that issue because I believe in an instance when you want to measure the justice system's effect on a group of people, you also want to know how the justice system is viewing that group of people. So this is the situation we have for now. It's something just to keep in mind around that side. Next slide. The last little bit is something that came up along the way that we discovered that we didn't expect. So as I mentioned, with ethnicity, there are three options, really. Latino, Latino or Hispanic, non-Latino or Hispanic, and unknown. There's a fourth kind of option in there is that the person can just leave, the person recording the information could just leave it blank. So you'll see the three options there. I kind of collapsed that missing or blank with the unknown. So when we looked at just the ethnicity of white arrestees by year, we found something interesting. In 2017 and 2018, that information looked almost exactly the same, right? And which is what we'd hoped for, is consistency across that time. So about 60% were recorded as white arrestees were non-Latino, about 25% Latino, and then 1 out of 7, 15% or so or less were unknown or missing. Now in 2019, you saw a jump both in the percent of Latino and the percent of unknown missing. And then in 2020, that the non-Latino group stayed the same, while the other two kind of flip-flopped. And that's a little concerning to me, not just in that the Latino percentage went down, which we wouldn't expect, but that the missing went up. That to me is troubling from a research side because I hate missing data, but also because when we do the analysis, then the result is that those group and the unknown or missing are going to appear in the presentation as white, when in fact they may be Latino and just not having their ethnicity recorded. So we know that as a result of specific law enforcement agencies that seem to have changed practices. We can see that from 2018 to 2019 and 2020. And if you want more information about that, Alice mentioned we do this biennial report to the governor and legislature, and we detail more information about those agencies and that change there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Peterson, for that explanation. Even though this is concerning to see that unknown or missing increase, I feel like this is also a really good example of why we need to do this work, because we would never know that a practice may have changed in the state to where we're not having the representation in the data that we would expect. So this is just, to me, from my non-research perspective, so useful already with the dashboard to be able to see that maybe we need to be asking some questions and see if we can make sure that our practices are consistent and that we are reflecting who is entering the juvenile justice system accurately. So though it's concerning, it also, I think, points to the benefit of this dashboard in and of itself.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes you set along a path and you discover things along the way that you didn't expect. And that's one of the things I think data analysis can help with. So
wonderful. Thank you. So the moment that everyone has been waiting for is to actually take a tour through the dashboard. I'm going to stop sharing right now so that Rachel can share her screen and we can take a look at the dashboard and get a tour through it. Here we are. Thank you so much, Rachel. Dr. Peterson, the floor is yours.
All right, well, thanks, everyone. So now, yeah, we got past all the intro. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. So you can see across the top, the law enforcement analysis, highlighting the age group again. Right below that is a brief description of that rate, how it's calculated, what it means. Below that are the navigation buttons. So from any page in the dashboard, you can get to any other page. Those navigation buttons are on every page there. And we have 4 different pages included, well, plus the landing page that you'll see. Below those buttons are a brief tutorial that my colleague Rachel Sanford created. It's about 10 minutes long, very similar to the walkthrough that I'm about to give you here. But if you need just a refresher, it's always good to go back and get information there. In addition, below that, there are a couple tips that we hope can improve your experience with the dashboard, make the navigation and use a little bit easier. And of course, our partners there as well on the bottom. Rachel, let's start where I think most people would want to start with is the geography page. And geography page, again, you can see across the top, just a brief description of what the dashboard is. Right below that, there's some information. You don't have to read it right now. It refers to shading. You'll notice the map in the middle has very dark green color in the background. That actually has a meaning there. It's not just aesthetic. And I'll go into that in just a minute. To the right of the text on the shading are the navigation buttons, so we can get around the dashboard if we need to from anywhere. On the left side, you have all the filters. So if you want to look at particular years, particular genders, race, ethnicity groups, or offense categories, you can do so. And you can do those individually or in any combination you want. The only thing that's important to remember is that if you are selecting a particular one, click off the all before you start. Otherwise, your results may look, you may get some double counting or strange results. So unclick all, click what you want to do, apply, and then you'll be able to see what you'd like to see. To the right of those filters are 3 gray boxes. Those simply represent the numbers from the last year in the data compared to the year prior to that. So 2020 was obviously the first year of the pandemic. Arrests dropped quite a bit. You can see the total arrests in the state were 6,845, down 40% from the year before. Obviously, as we get 2021 and 2022, those numbers, that's going to look much different. To the right of those boxes, you have a small map of Washington state, and that simply reflects the state rate based on the filters that you choose. So as you start to look at your particular groups or offense categories, those numbers in there will change. And that's just so that you can refer back up to that and see, well, how do I compare to the state average, or how does this group compare to the state average? So that you always have that reference point. The highlight of this page, or one of the 2 highlights, is this map of Washington. So this dark green section, the one in the middle of the page, represents the county level numbers. If you hover over a county, it'll pop up with the name of the county, the filters that you're using, just as a reminder, and then that arrest rate per 1,000 youth. And that changes as you go over each county, and you can see quite a bit of variation from county to county. As I mentioned, the shading issue, the shading is there because, again, we have this population-based rate, and if you've dealt with rates before, if you're basing your rate on a small population, right? If you're only talking about 10 youth in that county or in that city, then a small change of 1 or 2 arrests can make a big difference. And we think it's important people are aware of that. If they're looking year by year, for example, and they say, wow, why was there such a big jump from 2017 to 2018? Well, maybe that's an issue of just a very small population, and we're only talking about change from 2 to 4 arrests or something like that. And so as the population gets smaller, the colors in there will change. You'll start to see that in a minute as we give you an example. To the right of the county level numbers, you have city level numbers. So all those green dots represent cities. There's 100, I think we treated 198 different law enforcement agencies that represent cities. And so you can hover over the green dots and you can see the rates. Again, shows the same kind of information at the county level, arrest per 1,000. Now, this is a lot of numbers. Again, for those that aren't particularly math oriented, it can be a lot of information. So we came up with what we think is kind of a common use case here. And so let's walk through example. We'll do a little role play. And we're going to pick on Clark County. And Clark County, I think, is aware of this. I saw some people from Clark County in the attendees. We've done this in the past. They were one of the people that we talked to early on because they had made similar efforts and given us a lot of good feedback. And so we're going to imagine this role play that we are a county council person from Clark County. And we've heard about this new dashboard. We've got some information, we know some things already. We've been doing some reading about the justice system. We obviously see news and headlines and what we've done beyond that. So we have a little information. And we want to know what Clark County looks like in this dashboard. How are we performing? What's going on with juvenile arrests in our county? So one of the features of the county side is that you can click on the county. And when you do so, you click on Clark County. And you notice that on the city side, it pops up and just highlights, zooms in on Clark County, and you can see all the different dots representing the cities there. So Vancouver, obviously the largest one, Battleground, some of the other smaller ones, we can see how those change. And then, it gives us that background too. So we know that, those are relatively large populations. And so, but I'm a county council person, and I want to drill into those numbers a little bit. And I'm familiar with the justice system. And so I know that disparity is an issue for me that I'm concerned about. And I know that other research has shown that Black and Native American youth, especially Black and Native American males, are overrepresented in the justice system. So I unclick all genders and I click male and apply. And then in race, I unclick all. And I click Native American and Black and I apply. So now we're focusing just on Black and Native males and their arrest rates. And you can see kind of in the background that faded out area, some of the surrounding counties now, their colors changed. That just represents that it's a smaller population. You're talking less than 100 people in some of those counties. So back in Clark County. Now, originally, if you saw it before we honed in on particular races and genders, our rate was about 14 or 15 per thousand, and that was below the state average. So our rate was 14 or 15, the state average was about 19. So we're feeling pretty positive. We're not overexposing youth to the justice system to arrest. But when we make this change and we just focus in on Black and Native males, our arrest rate jumped way up, right? It went from about 14 or 15 up to almost 70. And it's now about 10% higher than the state arrest rate. You can see up in that small map of Washington. And so this is a bit concerning. I mean, I expected this to go up, but it's gone up quite a bit. But, you recognize that maybe there's been some changes over the years, right? Policies change all the time, practices change, personnel change. And so what does this look, have these rates look like over time? So we go back up and we unclick all years and we focus on 2017. So for all years combined, it's about 70. When we click just on 2017, that rate shoots up to 96. And now we're way above the state average. We're 20 arrests per thousand, more than 25% above the state average. And that's especially concerning, but let's see how this changes over time. So I unclick 2017 and go to 2018. And now I've dropped down quite a bit. So in 2018, that went down from 96 down to 78. And now we're still a bit above the state average, but we're getting closer to that range of, we'd expect to be consistent with the state average. So let's go to 2019 and see. So the good news is our rate continues to drop, right? And drop quite a bit. We went down from 78 down to 64. Again, now we're just right at the state, even if it's a little below the state average. Now, 2020 obviously was the pandemic year, so things were, there's a lot of change in normal practices, but just looking at that too, we're at 43 compared to 39 for the state, dropping quite a bit as we'd expect because of the pandemic conditions, but still within that range of the state average. So, now I've got a couple of questions. So if I've been a county council person concerned about arrest rates, I may not have known who to ask, right? How to drill down and get better information and ask better questions, because data isn't going to solve the problem, right? Our dashboard is not going to solve this problem. What it's going to do is help us ask better questions here. So now I can go from this broad, trying to talk to anybody I know and ask about arrest rates, or talking to all the sheriffs and police chiefs about what's happening with arrest rates. Now I can get a little bit better information. I can say, oh, okay, I know a little bit more now. I can hone down my question and maybe ask a little bit better one. But if I want to drill down even further, what I can do is go to our demographics page. And there's a lot on this page, so let me kind of walk you through it again. On the top is just the title again, a description. It has the same kind of shading approach, where we use purple this time, going to lighter purple and gray for smaller populations. The navigation buttons on the right, the filters on the left. And you'll see an additional one here that allows you to focus in on the state level or a particular county. You know, as a Clark County official here, we're going to use Clark County. We'll keep all offenses for now, but we'll go back and focus on the same group of Black and Native American males. And so this group of charts in the middle now will show us the year-by-year totals of all those, regardless of the filters we put on. So the gender group is going to show us all genders, as well as males and females, regardless of the fact that, you know, our filters just showed males. However, in the race field, it'll show all races, but just the males for those. And so those are, you know, the category in the title won't change, but the other categories will. So like I said, race will continue to show all, but because we click the male filter, it'll only show the males for all the races. So now the first thing that stands out to me, if I'm looking at that race chart, graph in the middle, is that the Native American arrest rates are pretty small relative to the other arrest rates. And so while the research told us that, you know, Native American males and Black males are overrepresented in the justice system, this may not be the case for my county. In fact, it doesn't look like it is. So if I'm a Clark County official, I'm going to go ahead and go back to my filters and unclick Native American, because I really want to focus in on the Black males being arrested, because that seems to be what's driving my rates. And as I scroll down there, in fact, it is. I mean, I look at my arrest rates. That means in 2017, for every 1,000 Black males in Clark County, there were 128 Black males arrested. Now, as we move to the right side, we can go down to the city level. So again, I'm a county official. I want to get down and ask, you know, better questions and understand this information from the, you know, the other stakeholders, the other people that have the answers, potential answers to these questions. So now I can go down to the city level and see which cities are really driving these rates. Now, what we're going to see is that, you know, in like in many counties, there's one big city and several small counties. So Ridgefield, La Center, Washougal, they all have that light gray background. So while they may show up as, you know, Washougal, you can see in 2017, there for that particular offense type had 176 arrests for 1,000 youth, but it's light gray. We know that means there's less than 25 youth, you know, in that whole population in that city. So it's not really what's driving our arrest rate. We're going to focus in on Vancouver. Now, for sometimes that may seem obvious, but in other cases, this is, you know, information that can help us really hone down. So if I'm now a county official and I want to know, okay, what can we do to change these arrest rates? What can we do to either divert youth, put in programs, or understand why these changes happened? You know, I can use this offense category to look at where opportunities for police discretion. Where could police give a warning, or, you know, not make an arrest, but, you know, if you issue a summons or some other way of dealing with the situation, or where could I put in a program to really target where arrests are being made so that we can keep youth out of the system for longer, as well as divert criminal activity. So I think you know, the first two that show up alphabetically are two very good examples. We have additional other offenses, and we have aggravated assault. Now, I didn't mention this earlier, but we have several categories listed here, but we didn't include all 60 some categories that are included in arrest data. And that's because several of them are just, you know, very uncommon offenses or not commonly asked about. And so we grouped into these other categories by the type. So we have, you know, other alcohol and drug, other nonviolent, other violent, property, etc. And if you want to know what's included in those, you can see here. So additional other really includes kind of public order things or other offenses that are usually relatively minor and don't fit neatly into one of the other categories. And so these may be opportunities for more police discretion. Okay, opportunities that you know, maybe police don't have to make an arrest. Now, if aggravated assault is really what's behind my arrest rate, well, maybe police do have to make an arrest there. So, you know, that may be things that are out of our control. Maybe we can look at other crime deterrence opportunities there, but, you know, discretion may not be at the table here. However, we can see additional other offenses are relatively high, you know, in Vancouver. So maybe now I can go to the Vancouver police chief and say, hey, why are so many arrests happening for Black males with, for other offenses, these relatively smaller offenses? Is there another option that we can use here? Create some opportunities for police to use their discretion and pursue other ways other than getting kids tied into the juvenile justice system. So that would be kind of our use case, how it'll allow an official to really drill down, get answers, recognize opportunities, understand changes, where those changes are coming from. The last page I want to show you on this is our county and city ranking page. And this, like before, you got the title on the top, the filters on the left, and the navigation buttons on the right. But in the middle, this is going to show you your county level ranking, arrest rate by arrest rate, as well as the city level ranking to the right of that. Right, again, so if you're a Clark County official and you're looking at this and you see that when you look at everybody arrested, your rate's 14.5, and if you don't want to do the math, you're below the state average, so you're in the bottom half of the state in terms of arrest rate. But now when you focus just on Black males, you can see how those change, and you don't have to do the counting. We did it for you. You're now 13th. You're now in the top third of counties in the state. And again, this is all years, and we know that this has changed over time. But it gives you a good sense of how these things change and how particular groups may be being affected in your county, and the type of issues happening. So if you hover over that now, your Clark County, you can hover over it, and you can see what are the numbers that add up to that 90. It's additional other offenses driving your arrest rate. So, again, just highlighting that these may be opportunities where discretion could be used, or alternatives that could reduce exposure, or programs that could divert youth and keep them out of the justice system if possible. To the right, you have the cities as well. So if you click on Clark County here in the middle, it'll highlight those cities using the same shading. Ridgefield in the center, smaller populations. Vancouver, however, your large population driver, again, highlighting which offenses are really driving your arrest rates. One other last thing I forgot to mention in the beginning, we have an information page. So if you go to the dashboard info page, if you have questions or issues that have come up, we've created a frequently asked question style information page here. Just letting you know kind of a lot of the information that we've covered here. So what goes into arrest rates, what are, how are race and ethnicity done, what are in those other categories, so that you can see that if you have questions along the way. Of course, we don't anticipate that we've covered all of this, so we'll continue to update this as more questions come in and try and improve the user experience. So with that said, I thank you all for your time and attention, and we'll start taking questions.
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Dr. Peterson. Thank you, Rachel. Feel free to start entering any questions you may have in the chat. I'm going to give you just a few minutes to do that. And I do have one question for you, Dr. Peterson, that we do already have. When are we going to see 2021 and 2022 data?
Yes, great question. Thank you. So we did just get the 2021 data near the end of last year. We have to do some formatting with it. Again, we don't do a lot of cleaning. We don't make assumptions with data, but what we're doing is just putting those data together. We anticipate this spring, definitely before summer, to try and have that the 2021 updated. We make the request usually to the sheriffs and police chiefs in the spring, and in the past they've gotten the data back to us for the previous year in around like August or so. So our hope is to get the 2022 data in August, if past practices hold true here, and then have the 2022 updated by the end of the year as our goal.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. We don't have any specific questions about the dashboard at present in the Q&A, so I will go ahead and share my screen, Rachel, so we can go over our future goals with everyone, and feel free to keep thinking about those questions if you have them. And we will come back to the Q&A before we finish up. So the plans right now for the future is that we through 2023 and into 2025, as you can see, we have some objectives, some benchmarks that we would like to accomplish in each of these years. You can see that we'll continue updating the law enforcement data dashboard, just as Dr. Peterson shared, with requesting that data from WASPIC and then getting it analyzed and loaded into the dashboard. And we'll be focusing on the next decision points in the system this year, looking at juvenile court referrals, charges, and adjudications. And we are hopeful that by the end of this year, we'll have a second page, a second dashboard in our juvenile justice data dashboard portfolio, I guess we can call it, in order to look at, again, similar rates, similar demographics by jurisdiction, by city, by county, and be able to see how things progress through the system. In year 2 of this 3-year timeline, we'll be focusing on juvenile court detention and diversion and continue to update that court dashboard. And then in 2025, we're looking at victim incident reporting and getting that added as well. So in addition to these continued additions, we also are hoping to identify additional funding. There are more things we would love to add to this dashboard. We would love to include juvenile recidivism, BECA and non-offender referrals, and even community profiles to be overlaid over this data so that we can understand more about resources in communities and access and even the geography impact, right, on where a juvenile court is and then where the youth live. It's important information to have in order to ask really targeted questions and to consider our policies and practices. So in order to do that, we need some more people, because Dr. Peterson and Rachel have an amazing skill set, and they've been working on this for years, and we would love to increase our time frame, what we can accomplish in a time frame. So we'll be focusing there. We will also want to provide support. So my email was at the beginning on the PowerPoint, but I'll also put it in the chat so everyone can see it. It's also on the OJJ website. So if you have additional questions on how the dashboard works, what the data definitions are, the scope, feel free to email me. And if I can't answer your question, I will make sure to find the person who can and to get you connected. And then finally, we also want to create a list of technical assistance resources for local jurisdictions. So if you're a county commissioner and you look at the data and you want to engage and work with law enforcement, or you want to work with your local community and you want to reach out to a technical assistance resource to help you with that project, we want to at least have some folks that we've checked with, we know their work, and that you could start with them, at least as a place to begin when you're focusing on those systems improvement goals that you may identify for yourself. So those are some things that we'll be continuing to work on within the Office of Juvenile Justice with our partners at Whisker. And we're really looking forward to having those things start being available. The additional questions, the support is already here. So feel free to reach out at any time. I see a few more questions popping up. I'm guessing that one of the questions might be, where do we find this dashboard if not here? So let me answer that one first, or if anyone's wondering. And you can go to our website. And I don't think you can see this one yet. So let me do a new share so you can see that. Are we able to see that now? Wonderful. So this is the data dashboard page on the Office of Juvenile Justice website within the DCYF webpage. And if you scroll down here to the bottom, here's some history about how it all came together and where the data comes from. But there's a link to the dashboard right here. The dashboard works on your web browser. You don't have to download anything to read it or to interact with it, and you can't break it. So feel free to press buttons and see what happens. So we promise you're not going to break the dashboard. And if things get confusing, you can always close it out and start again. Feel free to watch that short tutorial, that video on that first page that Rachel put together for us to review how it works and the little nuances and reminders that are really helpful. My email is here, as well as a simple questionnaire. So if you are using the dashboard and you want to fill out this questionnaire for us so that we can learn and continue to grow and update that dashboard to be the most user-friendly and useful to you all as possible, we would be very, very thankful. So I'm going to actually stop sharing everything now so we can see our panelists and we can start answering some questions. Okay, so we've answered the first one about when 2021 and 2022 data will be available. And the next one was, will this recorded session be available online? Yes, we will post a link on our website, probably on the same page I just showed you, so that it is available to folks to share, to find, to review. So I was able to handle that one. The next one I'm going to read out loud, and our experts regarding the data can decide who should answer it. Regarding the dashboard showing arrests by race, is there a way to reveal repeat arrests of individuals? Subjects will often complain that they are being targeted and arrested by police officers repeatedly.
I'll handle that, Jenny. Yeah, so that one actually, no, unfortunately, we're not able to. When we receive the data, it's de-identified. There's only a reference number, so that we can tell if more than one person was arrested for the same incident. However, we don't know particulars of that information of that individual. One, to protect that person's anonymity, especially in a small community. You know, if we had a dashboard that could tell us, 4 people have been arrested 6 times, and maybe there are only 5 people of those demographics in that area, that might be too revealing. So I think that's a step that the sheriffs and police chiefs take. We also, when we created the ratio or our rate, focused on arrests per 1,000 youth, because of that very same issue, that particular individuals may be arrested more than once, and we didn't want to kind of artificially cap that rate based on the population, and show that, yeah, if groups are being targeted and arrested more than once, we wanted the data to reflect that.
Okay. Thank you for that, Dr. Peterson. Another question, are there any suggestions or recommendations for agencies with large transitory populations that may skew the data? Cities with malls or other high traffic commercial areas such as Highway 99. Any suggestions for how they handle this data and look at it?
Yeah, that's another great question, and we've come across that. We had a presentation where we kind of sat together with a city council person from Tukwila, as well as the Tukwila police chief. Now Tukwila, for those that don't know, is a commercial center. There's a big mall there, and so you do get a lot of traffic from out of the area. So when you're comparing arrests, they may not be arrests of people that live there. So that may kind of, just as the asker said, throw the numbers off in terms of what you're seeing. But I think it's also important too, just to know the number of the amount of arrests that are happening there. And when you dig into that, you say, wow, why are my numbers so high? As you start to ask these better questions and drill down into these finer questions, well, that's something that these people, the stakeholders, those involved with the police or at the city level can answer that, and they should be asked that. And that should be an answer for them that they can easily provide. Now, we hope also when we get into the, as Janie said, overlaying those kind of city and county level information into the dashboard, we hope that can be reflected there too, to kind of save some time for individuals.
Thank you. I'm just checking our questions. It looks like that's all we have so far. We have a few extra minutes. For our panelists, are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share? Anything that's come up as we've listened to questions and the presentation?
Yeah, I'll go first for that one. The amount of data and information that's available in the arrest files is pretty extensive. It contains information about the location of an incident, whether an arrest was made in association with an incident, the relationship among people, the number of people who are involved, and our path, to make sense and make good use of this wealth of information is just beginning. So that's one thing to bear in mind. The other thing is that this is looking only at youth age 12 to 17. The same thing can be done for adults as well. And I guess the last thing is that this is an approach that is pretty broadly available to jurisdictions across the United States. If we can do it in Washington, other states can do it as well.
Thank you, Dr. McCurley. Alice?
I may also ask that we have great participation today, and many of you probably need to process and digest a little bit. As we move to our future plan, we really, really welcome your input. So you can reach any of us. No, just go ahead and reach out to Jenny and let us know, in level that you want to get involved. If you see anything that you think we should improve on, we'd love to hear from you as well. We want this to be a very engaging, and particularly from the user standpoint. This is not our project. This is like the state project at different level. And we want people to find it useful and to use it as much as possible. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you for that, Alice. We do have one final question to wrap us up. And I think Dr. Peterson, you were going to share as well. So I think you can probably answer this one. So I'll give you the question and then you can finish up. How does non-arrest data come into play with this data in which an arrest was not made?
Yeah, great question. It doesn't. So there is a kind of a hidden figure here that that we don't see, and that's that is what the police discretion, right? So we don't know how many times an officer stopped somebody and gave them a warning and let them go, or gave them a summons or some other result. So we do, however, through, as Carl said, the NIBRS data is very rich, gives us a lot of information. There is a section there on reported crimes, and we do plan on eventually making that into the dashboard too, that we can compare these two. So crimes reported versus arrests made. We're not there yet in understanding the data completely and to the level we think we need to in order to create that dashboard. So that'll take a little time, but it is in the plans, and hopefully that will shed some light on that issue.
Thank you. It looks like we have more questions that are coming. Folks are realizing we're reaching the end. Thank you for sharing. Do arrest records capture the home city or county of an arrested individual where they're from? Wondering if this could be used to understand those transitory issues.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I don't see that information in the data that I get from the sheriffs and police chiefs. It's possible that that's somewhere else. I know it's also an issue that we struggle with in the courts, because while the courts do capture that information, obviously there are issues with youth having housing instability, frequently moving around, changing addresses and things like that. So we don't have it currently. Unfortunately, that's an issue we're always going to see here, is that we don't know necessarily if the person was actually a resident of that place where they were arrested. I will say one thing that popped up in Tukwila that helped us identify that right away is you look at the number of shoplifting arrests, right? So you see shoplifting and you can understand it's a mall and people are coming to a mall. So that's one of those flags that you may not expect that show up. But it is always an issue. But really what we're measuring is law enforcement activity here, not criminal activity by the individual or by the residents of that county.
For that. Well, I just want to thank everyone for being here today. Thank you for joining us as we share the dashboard with you all. I do also want to thank our panelists for the time, not only that you put in to prepare for today's webinar, but all the work that has produced this dashboard. Many years of collaboration and visioning and figuring out how to solve problems and remove barriers. And I just want to thank you all for all of that work. It's a pleasure. Looking forward to the next 3 years and what we can get accomplished and share with our partners throughout the state. And also want to thank Jessica from community engagement within DCYF that's helped us to host this webinar and have you all here today and get it recorded. Thank you for your support, Jessica. We appreciate you. So with that, we will
And
go.
thank you,
Oh,
Jenny.
yes. Oh, thanks, Els. So with that, we will go ahead and end our webinar, and we should have this recorded and up for you. I would say give us a week, but we'll get it up there on the website so that folks can share it with those that weren't able to attend, and you can explore the dashboard as well. Have a wonderful day, everyone.